Secretary Lonnie Bunch, Secretary of the Smithsonian, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
The Secretary of the Smithsonian means you're the director. You run the place.
On good days, I do.
All right, good. Secretary Bunch is here as part of our series, culled from the New Republic's list of the 100 most significant political films of all time. You have selected the film. We're at number 95 on the list. 1932, Paul Muni leading the cast of I'm a Fugitive from a Chain Gang. You remember the first time you saw the film?
First time I saw the film was with my dad, and he talked a lot about, what this film was about and what I could learn from the film. And it was the first time I realized you could learn something from watching TV.
And how much have you taken from what he told, and what are your thoughts on it, seeing it now many years later?
He told me that the criminal justice system sometimes works, but often it was corrupt and it made good people corrupt. And I've never forgotten that.
Paul Muni is the star of this film. For people who don't know, it's a 1932 movie. It's a pre-code movie. It's relevant in a couple of different ways in the film. I think it serves it better that it's 1932 and not after the code started being enforced in 1934. But Paul Muni is a guy who, as you'll see early in the film, down on his luck, World War I veteran, and gets accused and convicted of a crime that he sort of commits, and then finds himself in a chain gang down south. So this is based on a true story.
I think that's what's so powerful about it. One of the things about this movie that is so good is that it really is accurate. You really get a sense of what it was like to be on a chain gang, the fact that sort of punishment was really something they did with every day, and that the brutality really sort of was replaced by what they said discipline, but it really was brutality. And that, in essence, what I find so fascinating about this film is that it's the first film that I ever saw that really helped me understand the restrictions of the chain gang, the pain of the chain gang, and also the pain that people felt. I just thought it really captured what a chain gang was.
Forced labor that you don't pay for. It reminds me of something. I can't quite recall what that is. I mean, it really is. It's this 20th century form of continuing slavery.
Well, in some ways, what the chain gang really is, it's a means of social control. It's really created after slavery is over, and it's a way to control many of these black men who are now free. It's also a way to control people that they think are hardened criminals, hard labor for hardened criminals. And that really what it is a system that controlled people, but it was a system that also allowed states to make a lot of money. You would rent the convicts to do work in factories, on farms, building roads, building railroads. So it really was a way to control people, but to use that labor as a free way to help states become prosperous.
I think the tendency for most people, myself included, is to think of Southern chain gangs as including almost exclusively black prisoners. And we'll see in this movie that the prisoners are segregated, and there certainly are black men on the chain gangs, but Paul Muni is white, but the brutality once you're on the chain gang is probably fairly universal.
I think that's right. I think the one difference is that most chain gangs were overwhelmingly African American. So this is really, it does show the segregation, and it does show that there were whites on the chain gang, but if you looked at the history of it, you'd see more African American presence than anybody else.
The most telling scene for me is a moment where they're woken up early in the morning, about to be taken away for the day's work, which by the clock they show us is basically a 16-hour day,
Yeah.
right? And you come back, you go to sleep, you do it again the next day. And there is this point that I don't know would have been made in a movie made after the code started enforcing censorship on the movies. But there's just these tight shots from director Mervyn LeRoy of the despair and hopelessness of the men. And you see it in the faces of the African Americans, and you see it in the faces of the white prisoners. And that, to me, is a very clear message that in this moment, everybody is all the same.
I think that's right. In some ways, that's such a powerful scene because you see that everybody's suffering, everybody's afraid, everybody's longing for freedom, regardless whether you're black or white. I think it's one of the most powerful scenes in the movie.
Yeah, fascinating conversation, Secretary Bunch. Thanks very much, and we'll continue it after we see the movie. Here it is, from Warner Brothers in 1932, directed by Mervyn LeRoy with a cast led by Paul Muni. I am a fugitive from a chain gang. I'm back with Secretary Lonnie Bunch, who runs the Smithsonian. You've had that job since 2019, is that right?
Seems like it's been 35 years.
I'm sure that job is stress-free. I don't know what you're talking about. All right, let's talk about the end of I'm a Fugitive from a Chain Gang. I mean, just in case some people missed it, mostly what you got there at the end is Muni saying to Helen, played by an actress named Helen Vinson, I hide in rooms all day, travel by night, no friends, no rest, no peace. I keep moving, That's all that's left of me. And then at the end, she says to him as he withdraws from her, can you tell me where you're going? No answer. Will you write? No answer. Do you need money? No answer. How will you live?
I steal.
Oof. And that's it. And then credits.
That's the best ending of just about any movie I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it really gives you that sense of here is a good person corrupted by a system and found himself with no other options other than to be what they thought he was, a criminal.
As far as an ending, this stamps it, right? Because this problem is not solved for him. And to the character in the movie, will never be solved.
As I'm watching the movie the first time, I thought, well, it'll work out at the end. And suddenly for us to realize that no matter what, it's going to be different and that he's going to be a criminal the rest of his life. He's going to be hiding in the shadows the rest of his life made an unbelievably powerful ending to me.
Yeah, you know, the callousness of the treatment is obviously, you know, the worst part of what these prisoners experienced. But what gets me is the callous betrayal of him. Right, when he sort of made this deal to, yeah, you'll serve 90 days and you get a pardon. Make it a year, we'll help you out. And then, no, right? And they knew all along
Exactly.
they were never going to do it. They didn't care.
Well, the notion that one, you could trust that system.
Right, that's right.
And two, the sense that he felt, all right, this is my chance to have a clean slate, to basically come back, and when I get out after 90 days, I can marry Helen and I can have the life I want. And then suddenly to slowly realize that's not going to happen. And yet to continue to keep working and then suddenly realizing one day, no matter what, they have him forever.
Yeah. The success of the National Museum of African American History and Culture has led you now, as the head of the entire Smithsonian, to start the process of opening 2 other museums, yeah?
I vowed after I built the African American Museum, I was done. Who knew I was going to have to build 2 new museums, a museum, National Museum of the American Women's History, and a National Museum of the American Latino. And that in some ways, the great strength of the Smithsonian is that we can create different portals into what it means to be an American. You could go through the Air and Space Museum or the African American Museum to understand that. And so these new museums will just enrich our ability to help people understand the complexity of the American experience.
Is it incredibly challenging to navigate this moment, and maybe it's longer than a moment, but this moment we are in history?
I think it's important to recognize that anybody that runs cultural institutions has to figure out, how do you find middle ground? How do you find allies? Because the reality is there are people that say there are stories you shouldn't tell. And I think from a historical point of view, you've got to tell these stories. And that in essence, my goal is to say that when we look at stories about African American culture, for example, we're not saying that the country is this horribly racist place. We're just saying that the country has been made better by the work of people who wanted the African American experience to be better. And that in essence, all they were saying is, how do you help the country live up to its stated ideals?
Last night I went to dinner and I mentioned a couple friends of mine that I was going to be talking to you today, and one of them said, "Oh, you're going to be dazzled by this guy." And he was right, Secretary Bunch.
You're so kind.
Thank you so much for being here. We really
My
appreciate
great
it.
pleasure. Thank you.
Secretary Bunch is done for the night, but the movies, of course, continue here on TCM, and as always, they are uncut and commercial-free.
Next on TCM, City Hall, then Strike, and later High and Low. TCM's got lofty ideals tonight.